Jennifer Chen stared at the register numbers for the fifth time, her hands trembling as she counted the bills again. It was a busy Friday evening at Golden Dragon Restaurant, where the 23-year-old had been working as a waitress for the past 8 months. The small family-owned restaurant, tucked away in a corner of Sacramento's bustling downtown, was usually packed on weekends. That evening had started like any other. Jennifer arrived at 4 p.m. for her shift, wearing her black uniform and comfortable shoes, her long black hair neatly tied back in a ponytail. The first few hours went smoothly. She served families celebrating birthdays, couples on dinner dates, and regular customers who always requested her section because of her friendly smile and efficient service. Around 7 p.m., the restaurant reached its peak busy period. Jennifer moved swiftly between tables, balancing plates of steaming Chinese dishes, refilling water glasses, and processing payments. She handled multiple transactions, always careful to count change correctly and keep her register organized. The kitchen was hot, the dining room was noisy, and everyone worked at full speed to keep up with the dinner rush. Jennifer. Torres's sharp voice cut through the restaurant's busy atmosphere. He stood near the entrance, his stocky frame blocking the host station. At 45, Torres had owned Golden Dragon for over a decade, inheriting it from his wife's family. His dark eyes narrowed as he watched Jennifer approach, clutching her order pad nervously. "Yes, Mr. Torres?" she asked, trying to keep her voice steady. "Why is table 12 still waiting for their check? I've been watching you waste time chatting with customers instead of doing your job," he snapped, though Jennifer knew she had only been explaining the daily specials to a new table as required. "I'm sorry, sir. I'll take care of it right away," Jennifer replied, hurrying back to her section. She could feel Torres's eyes following her every move, making her increasingly uncomfortable. He had always been particularly harsh with her, despite her consistent performance and positive customer feedback. As the evening progressed, Jennifer noticed Torres spending more time than usual near the registers, watching the staff handle transactions. His presence made everyone tense, and she saw how her coworkers tried to avoid his attention. The restaurant's atmosphere grew heavier, despite the cheerful customers who remained unaware of the building tension among the staff. When closing time approached at 10 p.m., Jennifer began her usual end-of-shift routine. She cleaned her tables, restocked condiments, and prepared to count her register. The other servers, Maria, David, and Sarah, were doing the same, their movements quick and efficient after years of practice. That's when she discovered the shortage. $200 missing, with no explanation. Jennifer's mind raced through every transaction she had handled that night, trying to remember if she had made any mistakes. She double-checked her credit card slips against the receipts, looked through the day's void tickets, and even searched the floor around the register in case bills had fallen. "Mr. Torres," she finally called out, her voice barely above a whisper. "I need to talk to you about something." Torres emerged from his office, his face already set in a scowl. "What is it?" he demanded, loud enough for nearby staff to hear. There's a problem with my register. It's showing a shortage of $200, but I know I've been careful with every transaction. I don't understand what could have happened," Jennifer explained, fighting to maintain her composure. Torres's face darkened as he stepped closer, the smell of his coffee-scented breath making Jennifer step back instinctively. "So, you're telling me you lost my money," he growled, his voice rising with each word. "Or should I say stole my money?" The accusation hung in the air like a thundercloud. The remaining customers looked up from their meals, and the kitchen staff paused their cleaning to watch. Jennifer felt her face grow hot with embarrassment and anger at the unfair accusation. "No, sir, I would never steal anything. I can explain every transaction. Maybe we can review the receipts together," she suggested, trying to remain professional despite her rising panic. Torres's response was immediate and harsh. "Everyone, stop what you're doing," he shouted, his voice echoing through the now silent restaurant. "Nobody leaves until we get to the bottom of this theft." Jennifer stood frozen, unaware that this moment marked the beginning of a nightmare that would change not only her life, but the lives of many others in ways she couldn't imagine. The remaining customers hurriedly paid their bills and left, sensing the growing tension in the restaurant. Torres locked the front door, flipping the O-pin sign to closed with unnecessary force. The sound of the lock clicking shut made Jennifer's stomach tighten with anxiety. Everyone in the dining room. Now, Torres commanded, pulling chairs around one of the large round tables. The restaurant staff, 3 other servers, 2 kitchen helpers, and the dishwasher gathered slowly, exchanging worried glances. Jennifer noticed Maria, the senior waitress, texting someone under the table, her hands shaking slightly. The dining room's usual warm lighting now felt harsh and exposing. The smell of cleaning solution mixed with leftover food created an unpleasant atmosphere as Torres paced around the table. His heavy footsteps echoed on the tile floor, adding to the tension. $200, Torres began, his voice dangerously quiet. $200 is missing from Jennifer's register. Nobody leaves until we find it. He stopped behind Jennifer's chair, placing his hands heavily on her shoulders. She flinched at his touch, but didn't dare move away. David, a college student who worked part-time, cleared his throat. Mr. Torres, maybe there was just a mistake in the counting. We've all had busy nights where the numbers got mixed up. Torres shot him a threatening look. Shut up. Did I ask for your opinion? He moved away from Jennifer and slammed his hand on the table, making the silverware rattle. Empty your pockets. All of you. Now. One by one, the staff members pulled out their belongings. Cell phones, car keys, loose change, and gum wrappers appeared on the table. Jennifer's hands trembled as she emptied her pockets, knowing she had nothing to hide but feeling violated nonetheless. Your purse too, Jennifer, Torres demanded, pointing at her bag hanging on a nearby chair. Dump it out. Everything. Jennifer reached for her worn black purse, a birthday gift from her mother. With burning cheeks, she turned it upside down over the table. Her personal items scattered across the surface: lip balm, a small makeup bag, her wallet, tampons, and various receipts. Torres roughly grabbed her wallet and opened it, pulling out cards and examining every compartment. See? There's nothing there, Jennifer said quietly, fighting back tears. I didn't take anything. Sarah, another waitress who had worked at Golden Dragon for 5 years, spoke up. Mr. Torres, this isn't right. We can check the security cameras if you're worried about missing money. The cameras hadn't worked for months, Torres snapped, throwing Jennifer's wallet back on the table. You all know that. Makes it convenient for thieves, doesn't it? Jennifer watched as her coworkers shifted uncomfortably in their seats. The kitchen helpers, both recent immigrants who spoke limited English, whispered to each other in Spanish. The older one, Manuel, looked like he wanted to say something but remained silent, likely afraid of losing his job. Stand up, Torres suddenly ordered Jennifer. Empty your socks. Show me your shoes. Humiliated, Jennifer stood on shaking legs. She removed her black work shoes, turning them upside down to show they contained nothing but her tired feet. She pulled her socks away from her ankles, proving there was nothing hidden there either. Mr. Torres, please, she pleaded, her voice cracking. I've worked here for 8 months. I've never taken anything. I wouldn't. 8 months of earning my trust, just to steal from me? Torres's face reddened with anger. My wife's family built this restaurant from nothing. We give you people jobs, and this is how you repay us. The air grew thicker with tension as Torres continued his tirade. The other staff members sat frozen, some looking down at their hands, others watching the scene unfold with horrified expressions. The only sounds were Torres's angry voice and Jennifer's occasional sniffles as she tried not to cry. Maria's phone buzzed on the table. Torres snatched it up, reading the screen. Calling for help, are we? He sneered, showing a half-written message to someone named Mom. He deleted the text and tossed the phone back. Nobody calls anyone, he declared. This ends tonight. If the money doesn't show up. He paused, looking directly at Jennifer with cold eyes. Well, there are other ways to find out where you might be hiding it. Jennifer wrapped her arms around herself, suddenly feeling very cold despite the warm kitchen nearby. She caught a glimpse of her reflection in the restaurant's dark windows. Her uniform disheveled, her face pale with fear, her eyes wide with growing terror as she realized this humiliating search was far from over. The night was about to get much worse. The clock on the restaurant wall showed 11:30 p.m. as Torres's anger reached new heights. The initial search had revealed nothing, but instead of backing down, he became more aggressive. The dining room's temperature seemed to drop with each passing minute as the situation grew more dire. I'll give you one last chance to confess, Torres said, leaning close to Jennifer's face. His coffee-stained breath made her turn away. "Tell me where the money is, or I'm calling the police." Jennifer's heart pounded so hard she could hear it in her ears. "Please," she whispered, "I haven't taken anything. Call the police if you want. I have nothing to hide." Torres pulled out his cell phone, waving it in front of her face. "You think the police will believe you? A waitress with a missing $200? They deal with thieves like you every day." He started dialing, his thumb hovering over the call button. David stood up suddenly, his chair scraping loudly against the floor. "This is crazy. You can't keep us here like this. It's almost midnight." "Sit down," Torres roared, pointing at David with his free hand. "Anyone who leaves is fired, and I'll make sure you never work in another restaurant in Sacramento." The threat hung heavy in the air. Everyone knew Torres had connections with other restaurant owners in the area. His word could seriously damage their job prospects, especially for those who depended on restaurant work to support themselves or their families. Maria, still sitting quietly, had managed to slide her phone partially under her leg. She was trying to record the scene discreetly, her hands trembling as she positioned the device. Torres was too focused on Jennifer to notice. "Take off your apron," Torres demanded, turning back to Jennifer. "Shake it out. Maybe you've got some special hiding place sewn into it." Jennifer untied her black apron with shaking hands. As she held it up and shook it, her night's tips fell to the floor, about $40 in small bills and change. Torres immediately pounced on this. "Aha, money," he exclaimed, snatching the bills from the floor. "Where's the rest of it?" "Those are my tips," Jennifer protested, her voice rising with desperation. "You can ask any of the servers. We all made about the same tonight. Check their aprons, too." The kitchen helpers, Manuel and Carlos, began speaking rapidly in Spanish, clearly disturbed by the escalating situation. Torres whirled around to face them. "English," he shouted. "This is America. Speak English or get out." Manuel stood up slowly, his weathered face set in a grim expression. "Señor Torres, this no good. The girl, she not steal. We all go home now." Torres stepped toward Manuel threateningly. "You want to lose your job too? Sit down." The older man hesitated, then slowly sank back into his chair, muttering an apology. His eyes met Jennifer's briefly, filled with shame at his inability to help her. Sarah, who had been quiet until now, spoke up in a shaky voice. "Mr. Torres, what if someone else took the money? It could have been a customer reaching over the counter, or maybe there was a mistake in the morning count." "Shut up." Torres slammed his hand on the table again. "I know it was her. I've been watching her get friendly with customers, laughing at their jokes, probably planning this for weeks." Jennifer felt her world spinning. The accusation was ridiculous. Being friendly with customers was part of her job, something Torres himself had demanded of all servers. But now he was using it against her, twisting everything she did into something suspicious. "If you don't find that money," Torres continued, his voice dropping to a threatening whisper, "I'm not just calling the police. I'll make sure everyone knows what you did. Your family, your friends, every restaurant in the city. You'll never work in service again." The threat hit Jennifer hard. She was putting herself through community college with this job, and her mother was sick. She couldn't afford to lose her income or her reputation. Tears began rolling down her cheeks as the reality of her situation sank in. Torres watched her cry with cold satisfaction, interpreting her tears as a sign of guilt rather than fear and desperation. He moved closer, his large frame looming over her smaller one. "So," he said, his voice filled with cruel determination, "if you won't show us where you hid the money willingly, we'll have to take this to the next level. And believe me, you don't want that." The other staff members watched in horror as Torres reached for his keys, walking toward the office. They all knew the night was about to take an even darker turn, but felt powerless to stop what was coming next. Torres emerged from his office holding a security guard's jacket. The sight of the uniform made Jennifer's blood run cold. She knew he sometimes worked as a part-time security guard at local events. He was using this to make his threats seem more official. "Last chance," he announced, putting on the jacket. "Either you show us where the money is hidden, or I'll have to conduct a proper search. Your choice." The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead as an awful silence fell across the room. Maria's phone continued recording discreetly, capturing the escalating abuse of power. Sarah had her head down, silently crying, while David looked pale and sick. I don't have anything to show you, Jennifer said, her voice barely audible. Please, just call the police if you think I stole something. Torres's face hardened. Remove your outer clothing. Now, if you've got nothing to hide, prove it. Jennifer wrapped her arms around herself protectively. You can't do this. It's illegal. What's illegal is stealing from me, Torres shouted. Either strip down to prove you're not hiding my money, or I call the police and press charges for theft. The other staff members watched in horror as Jennifer, seeing no way out, began to unbutton her uniform shirt with trembling fingers. Tears streamed down her face as she stood in her undershirt. Torres gestured impatiently for her to continue. Manuel suddenly stood up again. No, stop. This wrong, he shouted in his broken English. Torres whirled around, grabbing Manuel by his collar. You want to join her? Or maybe you're her accomplice. Sit down and shut up. Manuel, thinking of his family at home depending on his income, reluctantly sat back down. The shame on his face reflected what everyone in the room was feeling, the guilt of watching this happen without being able to stop it. Jennifer reached for the zipper of her work pants, her hands shaking so badly she could hardly grip it. She stood in her undergarments, humiliated and terrified, as Torres circled her like a predator. The money has to be somewhere, he muttered, more to himself than anyone else. Keep going. Please, Jennifer sobbed, crossing her arms over her chest. I'm begging you. Don't make me do this. Maria, unable to watch anymore, spoke up. I'm calling the police. She reached for her phone, but Torres was faster. He grabbed the device, discovering it had been recording. His face turned purple with rage. You've been recording this. Give me that. He tried to delete the video, but in his anger, his fingers fumbled on the screen. This moment of distraction gave David the courage to act. He jumped up and ran to the kitchen, returning with several clean tablecloths. With Torres still struggling with the phone, David wrapped one of the cloths around Jennifer's shoulders like a protective shield. This ends now, David declared, his voice shaking but determined. We're all witnesses to this, Mr. Torres. You can't delete all our memories. Sarah finally lifted her head, finding her voice. I've been texting my boyfriend updates every few minutes. He's already called the police. They're on their way. Torres's face changed as he realized he had lost control of the situation. The sound of distant sirens confirmed Sarah's words. He backed away from Jennifer, suddenly looking uncertain. Get dressed, he ordered Jennifer, trying to sound authoritative but his voice cracking. This was just a security check, standard procedure for theft. Jennifer's hands shook as she gathered her clothes, holding the tablecloth around herself. The other servers formed a protective circle around her as she dressed, shielding her from Torres's view. Maria had retrieved her phone during the chaos and was clutching it tightly, the evidence of Torres's abuse safely recorded. The sirens grew louder. Torres paced frantically, running his hands through his hair. Everyone get out, he shouted. We're closed. Go home. Forget this happened. But it was too late. Red and blue lights flashed through the restaurant windows as police cars pulled into the parking lot. Jennifer, now fully dressed but still trembling, felt a strange mix of relief and terror. The immediate nightmare was ending, but she knew this was just the beginning of a longer journey toward justice. As the police entered the restaurant, the staff members exchanged looks of shared trauma and silent support. They had witnessed something horrific. Their collective evidence would ensure Torres would never be able to abuse his power like this again. The next morning, Jennifer sat in her small apartment, wrapped in a blanket despite the warm weather. Her phone hadn't stopped buzzing since 3 a.m. when the video started circulating on social media. Maria had sent the recording to several local news stations before posting it online, where it quickly went viral. The previous night's events played through her mind like a horrible movie. After the police arrived, they had taken statements from everyone present. Jennifer remembered how Officer Sarah Chen had gently led her to a quiet corner, speaking softly as she documented everything. The female officer had given Jennifer her card, promising to personally follow up on the case. You need anything, sweetie? Jennifer's mother called from the kitchen. She had driven over as soon as she heard, despite her own health issues. The smell of her mom's comfort food cooking filled the apartment, but Jennifer couldn't eat. No, Mom, I'm okay, She replied automatically, though she was far from okay. Her phone buzzed again, another news outlet requesting an interview. She ignored it. David had already called twice to check on her. He told her how the video had reached several advocacy groups overnight. Workplace harassment organizations and women's rights groups were offering legal support. Jennifer felt overwhelmed by the attention, but grateful she wasn't alone anymore. Her laptop screen showed dozens of supportive messages from strangers. The local community was rallying behind her. Former employees of Golden Dragon were coming forward with their own stories about Torres's abusive behavior, though none as severe as what Jennifer had endured. A knock at the door made Jennifer jump. Her mother peeked through the peephole and relaxed. "It's Maria," she called out. Maria entered carrying a thick manila envelope. Her usual cheerful face looked tired, but determined. "I brought the original video files," she said, sitting beside Jennifer. "My cousin works in digital forensics. He made secure copies and helped me file them properly for evidence." Jennifer managed a weak smile. "Thank you, Maria, for everything. If you hadn't recorded it—" "Don't even think about that," Maria interrupted, squeezing her hand. "Torres had done enough terrible things. Someone had to stop him." Jennifer's phone buzzed again. This time it was Sarah. The text read, "Channel 7 is reporting the restaurant's been shut down pending investigation. Torres's wife is filing for divorce. You're not alone anymore. We're all behind you." A wave of emotion hit Jennifer as she read the message. The night before, she had felt so helpless and alone. Now, she had an entire community supporting her. But with that support came pressure and attention she wasn't sure she was ready for. Her mother brought over some tea, sitting on Jennifer's other side. "The lawyer called again," she said gently. "She says we have a very strong case. Multiple witnesses, video evidence, previous complaints." Jennifer nodded, staring into her tea. The lawyer, Patricia Martinez, specialized in workplace harassment cases. She had contacted Jennifer first thing in the morning, offering to take the case pro bono after seeing the video. "Did you see the online fundraiser?" Maria asked, showing Jennifer her phone. "Someone started it for your legal fees and lost wages. It's already reached $15,000. Tears welled up in Jennifer's eyes. The support was overwhelming, but it also made everything more real. She couldn't hide from what had happened. The video was out there. People had seen her at her most vulnerable moment. The police officer called too. Her mother added, "They're charging Torres with false imprisonment, assault, and several other things. They want you to come in tomorrow to give a formal statement." Jennifer took a shaky breath. "I don't know if I can face him again." "You won't have to, not yet," Maria assured her. "But Jennifer, what you're doing is important. You're giving others the courage to speak up." 3 other former employees have already filed complaints this morning. Looking at her phone again, Jennifer saw messages from servers at other restaurants, sharing similar stories of abuse and harassment. Her horrible experience was becoming a catalyst for change, though that knowledge didn't make her pain any easier to bear. "One step at a time," her mother said softly, stroking her hair like she used to when Jennifer was small. "You don't have to be strong all at once." As the afternoon sun filled her apartment, Jennifer leaned against her mother's shoulder, drawing comfort from her presence. The worst night of her life had somehow become the start of something bigger than herself, but for now, she just needed to breathe, to feel safe, and to begin healing from the trauma she had endured. 1 week after the incident, Detective Lisa Morgan sat at her desk reviewing the growing case file against Michael Torres. The video evidence had sparked a full investigation, not just into the assault on Jennifer, but into years of alleged misconduct at Golden Dragon restaurant. The police station buzzed with activity as more victims arrived to give statements. In the waiting area, a young man named Kevin John described how Torres had forced him to work 16-hour shifts without breaks 2 years ago. Next to him, an elderly woman who had worked as a dishwasher recalled how Torres had withheld her final paycheck, threatening to report her to immigration if she complained. Jennifer arrived for her follow-up interview, accompanied by her lawyer, Patricia Martinez. She looked different now, still shaken, but more composed. The dark circles under her eyes told of sleepless nights, but there was determination in her stance. "The labor board investigators want to talk to you next week," Patricia informed Jennifer as they waited. "They're doing a complete audit of the restaurant's practices. Torres's financial records are raising red flags." Detective Morgan led them to a private room, where Jennifer provided additional details about her 8 months working at Golden Dragon. She described how Torres would routinely shortchange employees, claim the credit card system had errors on busy nights, and pocket a portion of the server's tips. It wasn't just about the missing money that night, Jennifer explained, her voice steady. He wanted to show his power over us. He knew the security cameras weren't working. He planned it. Outside the police station, local news crews gathered. The story had grown beyond Jennifer's assault. It now represented a broader expose of workplace abuse in the restaurant industry. Labor rights organizations held rallies, demanding stricter enforcement of worker protection laws. Back at the precinct, forensic accountants pored over Golden Dragon's books. They discovered years of tax evasion, unreported cash transactions, and systematic wage theft totaling hundreds of thousands of dollars. Look at this, one accountant showed Detective Morgan. He was running 2 sets of books. The official payroll showed legal wages, but he was actually paying well below minimum wage in cash, especially to undocumented workers. The investigation expanded to include the State Labor Department and the IRS. Torres's banking records revealed suspicious transfers, suggesting possible money laundering through the restaurant. Maria visited the station that afternoon, bringing additional video evidence from her phone. She had discovered older recordings of Torres berating staff, including one where he threatened to destroy a teenage busboy's future for breaking a dish. "We always knew he was bad," Maria told the detective, "but we were all afraid. Some of us have families to support. He knew that and used it against us." The police also interviewed Torres's wife, Lisa, who had filed for divorce. She revealed years of witnessing his abusive behavior but feeling powerless to stop it. "The restaurant was my family's legacy," she explained through tears. "He took over and turned it into something horrible." By evening, Detective Morgan had compiled enough evidence to request additional charges. The district attorney's office was preparing a comprehensive case that went far beyond the initial assault charges. "We're looking at multiple felony counts," the DA explained in a meeting with Jennifer and her lawyer. "Financial crimes, labor law violations, witness intimidation, assault. Torres won't walk away from this easily." Jennifer listened quietly as they outlined the growing case. Part of her felt vindicated, but another part was still processing her trauma. "Will others have to testify?" she asked, thinking of her coworkers. "Many have already volunteered," Patricia assured her. "Your courage in coming forward broke the dam. People aren't afraid anymore." As the day went down, Detective Morgan added another stack of witness statements to the case file. On her wall, she had pinned a timeline of Torres's alleged crimes, stretching back nearly a decade. The investigation was revealing not just one night of horror, but a long history of systematic abuse. "We'll get him," she promised Jennifer as she left. "What happened to you was terrible, but it's going to help a lot of other people find justice too." Outside, the evening news led with updates on the case. The story had become a symbol of workplace abuse and the importance of standing up to predatory employers. As Jennifer watched the coverage from home, she realized that her nightmare was transforming into something powerful, a catalyst for change that would protect other workers from suffering the same abuse. The county courthouse buzzed with activity on the morning of Torres's first hearing. 3 months had passed since the incident, and the case had grown far beyond its initial scope. Jennifer sat in the front row of the courtroom, surrounded by her family, former co-workers, and other victims who had come forward. Torres looked smaller somehow in his dark suit, nothing like the intimidating figure who had terrorized his employees. His lawyer had advised him to plead not guilty, despite the overwhelming evidence against him. The video of Jennifer's assault had been viewed millions of times online, making it impossible to find jurors who hadn't heard about the case. District Attorney Sarah Williams stood before Judge Martinez, laying out the extensive charges. "Your Honor, the state brings 28 separate counts against the defendant, including assault, false imprisonment, wage theft, tax evasion, and multiple labor law violations." Maria testified first, her voice strong as she described the night of Jennifer's assault and the years of abuse she had witnessed. "He made us feel powerless," she explained. "We were afraid to lose our jobs, afraid he would blacklist us at other restaurants." One by one, former employees took the stand. Manuel, the kitchen helper, spoke through an interpreter about working 14-hour shifts without breaks. A former hostess described how Torres would dock her pay for minor infractions like being 1 minute late. Each testimony built upon the last, creating a devastating portrait of workplace abuse. Jennifer's testimony came late in the afternoon. She walked to the witness stand with steady steps, though her hands trembled slightly. The courthouse was packed, with reporters filling the back rows and overflow crowds watching on monitors in adjacent rooms. "Can you tell us about the night of April 15th? The prosecutor asked gently. Jennifer took a deep breath and began her story. She described the missing money, Torres's escalating anger, and the horrifying moments when he forced her to undress. Her voice broke several times, but she continued, determined to share every detail. "I felt helpless," she said, looking directly at Torres. "But I'm not helpless anymore. None of us are." During cross-examination, Torres's lawyer tried to suggest Jennifer had orchestrated the incident for social media attention. The strategy backfired as Jennifer calmly presented text messages, emails, and workplace records documenting Torres's pattern of abuse. The financial evidence proved equally damaging. Forensic accountants testified about years of tax fraud and wage theft. Bank records showed Torres had stolen over $400,000 from employees through various schemes. The missing $200 that sparked Jennifer's assault had likely been taken by Torres himself to create an excuse for terrorizing her. Lisa Torres, now his ex-wife, provided crucial testimony about the restaurant's finances. "He took my family's business and turned it into his personal kingdom," she testified. "He enjoyed having power over people. The more vulnerable they were, the more he abused them." As the trial progressed, workplace advocacy groups held rallies outside the courthouse. The case had become a symbol of the fight against employer abuse, particularly in the restaurant industry. New legislation was already being drafted, inspired by the revelations from the Golden Dragon case. Patricia Martinez, Jennifer's lawyer, presented the civil lawsuit running parallel to the criminal case. The damages sought were in the millions, not just for Jennifer, but for all the employees Torres had exploited over the years. "This isn't just about money," Patricia explained to reporters during the break. "It's about accountability. It's about making sure employers know they can't treat workers like this anymore." Near the end of the day, surveillance video from a nearby business revealed something shocking. Torres himself had taken the $200 from Jennifer's register while she was serving customers. The footage showed him quickly pocketing the money when no one was watching. The revelation caused a stir in the courtroom. Torres's lawyer immediately requested a recess to confer with his client. The evidence had destroyed their last line of defense, the claim that Torres had been legitimately investigating missing money. As court adjourned for the day, Jennifer stood outside with her supporters. Reporters called out questions, but she remained quiet, letting her lawyer handle the press. She felt drained but relieved. The truth was finally coming out, and Torres would face justice for his years of abuse. The trial would continue for several more days, but the outcome seemed clear. Torres's reign of terror at Golden Dragon was over, and his case would serve as a warning to other abusive employers. 1 year after the incident at Golden Dragon, Jennifer stood at a podium in the state capitol building. Behind her, Governor Harris prepared to sign the Workers' Protection Act, legislation that had grown directly from her case. The new law would strengthen protections for restaurant workers and increase penalties for employer abuse. "Today marks a new chapter," Jennifer began, addressing the crowd of legislators, activists, and fellow survivors. "What happened to me was terrible, but it led to something important. This law will help protect others from going through what we experienced." The past year had brought significant changes. Torres had been found guilty on 25 of 28 charges. The judge had sentenced him to 12 years in prison and ordered him to pay $4.2 million in restitution to his former employees. The civil lawsuit had also succeeded, resulting in additional compensation for the victims. Maria sat in the front row, smiling proudly at her friend. After the trial, she had started a workers' rights organization that helped restaurant employees understand their legal protections. The group had already assisted hundreds of workers in reporting abuse and recovering stolen wages. "The Golden Dragon case changed everything," commented Sarah Williams, the district attorney who had prosecuted Torres. "It showed people that they don't have to accept workplace abuse as normal. It gave them courage to speak up." The old restaurant building had been transformed. Lisa Torres, Michael's ex-wife, had used money from the sale of their assets to convert it into a training center for restaurant workers. The center offered free classes on workers' rights, professional development, and small business management. Jennifer now worked as an advocate, speaking at conferences and helping other survivors navigate the legal system. She had finished her degree in social work, specializing in labor rights and workplace trauma counseling. Her story was being taught in law schools as a landmark case in workers' rights litigation. When I think about that night, Jennifer told a reporter after the ceremony, I remember feeling so alone and powerless. But look around now, we built a community of support. We're making sure no one has to face that kind of abuse alone again. Manuel, the kitchen helper who had tried to help Jennifer that night, had received his citizenship with help from immigrant rights groups that got involved in the case. He now owned a small catering business and worked with Maria's organization to help other immigrant workers understand their rights. The security footage showing Torres stealing the money himself had become a powerful symbol of how abusers often create situations to justify their actions. Workplace psychology experts used the case to train managers and business owners about the dynamics of power and abuse. David, the young server who had given Jennifer the tablecloth that night, had graduated from college and was working as a labor rights attorney. Jennifer showed us that one person speaking up can create real change, he said during the ceremony. She turned her trauma into a movement. After the governor signed the bill, Jennifer walked through the Capitol Gardens with her mother. Her mom's health had improved, and she beamed with pride at her daughter's accomplishments. They stopped at a bench to rest and reflect. Did you ever think that night would lead to all this? Her mother asked, gesturing at the crowd of supporters leaving the building. Jennifer shook her head. I just wanted it to stop. I never imagined we'd be here, changing laws and helping others. The Workers' Protection Act would require functioning security cameras in all restaurants, establish clear procedures for handling monetary disputes, create a whistleblower protection program, and set up a rapid response system for reporting workplace abuse. As the sun set over the Capitol, Jennifer received a text from Patricia Martinez, her lawyer who had become a close friend. Another restaurant worker in a nearby city needed help with an abusive situation. Without hesitation, Jennifer replied that she would meet with them tomorrow. The work isn't finished, Jennifer told her mother as they walked to their car, but at least now we have tools to fight back. We have laws with real teeth, people who will listen, and a community that stands together. The Golden Dragon case had become more than just a viral video or a courthouse victory. It had sparked a movement, changed laws, and shown that even the most powerless-seeming person could stand up and make a difference. As Jennifer drove home that evening, she passed the old Golden Dragon building, now the Workers' Rights Training Center. The new sign caught the last rays of sunlight, symbolizing how something positive had grown from that terrible night. The darkness of abuse had been transformed into a beacon of hope for others.